Hmm. Okay. Good evening, people of the face. Although it's entirely possible you are watching this not in the evening, and that's okay. Today, I want to have a conversation with Annie LaCroix of the Columbia, let me get the school name right, Columbia River Institute of Massage Therapy in Wenatchee, Washington, Central Washington.
You got it.
And what we want to talk about today is the fact that making your time work for you does not have to be drudgery, does not have to be tedious, does not have to be a straitjacket, does not have to be a forced march, but you can figure out what works for you. And there are actually some fun and creative ways to do this. I first heard Annie talk about this at the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education virtual conference back in August. Is that right?
July.
Yeah. July. And I was fascinated because some of the stuff I'm like, yeah, I do some of that. And then she got into this other stuff and I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. I should try that. So she was talking about how she works with students to make sure they can organize their time best to meet their deadlines and, actually graduate. But in reality, let's face it, the needs aren't any different for working massage therapists. We all wrestle with the same kind of issues of how do we manage our time. So thank you for being open for this, Annie. I have been looking forward to this.
Yeah, and me too.
What led you to want to do that talk at the AFMTE?
Well, probably just years of working with students in my school and then also doing some business consulting and meshing those two together and realizing that really the hang up for a lot of people in getting where they want to get is time management. But time management feels like a bad word, a bad phrase to a lot of people, or feels like a lot of, I don't want to do that, or routines. People don't like to hear about routines or schedules or whatever. So trying to take what I've learned from working with people and meshing that with what really works for massage therapists, for anybody really, but I just work predominantly with massage therapists, and saying, how can you make time work for you rather than feeling like you have to fit everything into the time you're allotted. So that it just evolved over time. And then of course I love teaching at any conference for massage therapists. So.
Yeah. Even if they hardly pay me, I'm like,
I know, me too. I just think it's fun.
It is a good time.
And that virtual conference was great. I mean, they did such a good job with it. I really enjoyed it. So, yeah.
And for any of you out there who are educators or want to be educators, that conference is held every 2 years. And it's such a fabulous opportunity to talk to people who are living the educational reality, school owners, educators, administrators. It's your people.
Yeah, it is. But it is going to be again next year because
it's
going to be in person in 2022. It's in Austin.
Yes, I do remember seeing that. Okay, I'm aside. That has nothing to do with work for you, except I'm excited to go to Austin next year.
Yeah, me too.
So it seemed like what I remember from your presentation was there were sort of categories or approaches,
right?
Or different ways you could look at it. What are some of the most fundamental things you work with your students on when it comes to time? Where do you start with them?
The absolute baseline is looking at your own schedule and what works for you. And a lot of people haven't done that yet. Most people I find have tried to fit into what other people say you should do. You should get up early. You should do this. Well, you should if it works for you. So we start with there. We start with doing some exercises in how you can analyze your best times of the day. There are different things that we're good at different times of day. For example, we're better at analytical tasks at certain times of day. We're better at creative tasks at other times of day. And that really depends on the person. So we start off with saying, look at when do you like to study? That's what I do with my students. When are you best at studying? And someone's like, 8:00 at night, and someone else is first thing in the morning. Okay, so now you know when you're good at analytical stuff, right? So that's what I start with. My baseline is figuring out how your day works and what works the best for you in that day.
And what are some of the categories? You said analytical work. Are there other sort of types of activities you ask them to notice they're fit for?
Yeah. So first, when we're analyzing it, we're looking at tasks like that, analytical, that take your brain, real cerebral stuff, creative stuff where you're still using your brain, but it's a little bit more free form, right? I would think in terms of massage, I would say massage itself would be creative, but the bookkeeping around massage would be analytical, right?
Right.
And then also how much of your time do you use for things that are maybe rejuvenating or procrastinating? So what do you need to do that's rejuvenating? Maybe you go for a walk, maybe you go swimming, maybe you do something else. And what's procrastinating, like Netflix or right? And taking the time to see how much of that, and a lot of people can find a lot of time that they didn't know they have. Like the exercise that I have my students do is to take a week of documenting their own activities and say, I did not realize that I watch TV or I'm on Instagram or whatever it is for this many hours a week. Well, that's a procrastinating activity. And then rejuvenating activities, a lot of people find that they don't do enough of them. Like, oh, I only did one thing this week that helped me rejuvenate. Self-care. You could think of it as self-care. So looking at those two categories too is a great way to find time and also to make time, because the more rejuvenating activities you have in a week, the more efficient you will be with the time in which you're doing other activities, right?
So when I talk to people about the idea of taking a business massage or a business retreat, I'll say you should leave home.
Yeah.
I said, because when you have to deal, you've set yourself up with certain things you want to accomplish. And if you're at home, suddenly you desperately need to repaint the inside of your dishwasher. Anything, the cat needs a bath.
Right now. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything to avoid that thing. That's why you don't do this at home.
Right. And let me use that business retreat that's a perfect example of something where people say, okay, now I want to go to a business retreat. I'm going to go away for 2 days and I'm going to get all this stuff done that I haven't done all year. That's also not effective. Your business retreat has to be scheduled in a way where you are taking a walk or you're getting a massage. And then maybe in the morning, I'll use myself as an example. I'm best with analytical tasks early in the morning. So I would set myself up to do my hardest things in the morning. And then maybe I take a walk and then I do some more creative brainstorming in the afternoon. And so that would make that business retreat that much more efficient rather than going, I'm just going to do everything in this one weekend, and you won't get it done.
And you'll hate it and you'll never do it again.
Exactly. But you can make it like this beautiful, business retreats, we should all be doing them, right?
And mine have evolved over the years, and it's always a week. The first one's always a weekend in January.
Oh, yeah.
Go somewhere attractive.
Yep.
When I get there on Friday, I get a massage. Saturday is all about the year that just passed, closing up my bookkeeping for my accountant, kind of playing with the numbers. What can I learn from what happened this year? But when I'm done with that, then the rest of the day is mine.
Right.
And I always treat myself to good dinners.
Yeah.
Eating well. And then Sunday is always, okay, what do I want the next year to be about?
Right.
And that's the dreaming and the scheming. And okay, let's put some numbers to it. Let's get some reality around it. Nice dinner. And then I go home on Monday.
Yeah. That's a beautiful combination of rejuvenating activities, analytical activities, and just the way you said that schedule. You said, I get up and I do this, and then when I'm done, the rest of the day is mine. Well, let's say there's somebody else that finds that they do that stuff better in the afternoon. Then get up and enjoy your morning.
Yeah.
Don't feel like I'm on a business retreat. I have to do the stuff in the morning. Do it in the morning if it works for you.
Right. Well, people have always said, oh, if you're going to write, you got to get up early. That doesn't work for me at all.
There you
go.
My
sweetest writing times are between sort of 1 to 5 in the afternoon.
Right.
That's when I'm most creative with my writing, because I've taken care of all of the nuts and bolts stuff.
Yep.
This is I'm free to play with the words.
Yeah. So that's the time, that's your time, and it doesn't matter. And you can read so many, I know you've probably experienced this over the years, and I hear my students say it all the time, but you've probably read many things that, like you just said, that say, write for an hour, first thing in the morning, then you'll get the most done. And that then people are trying to do that and they're not succeeding. And they think, then they turn that into, well, I'm not meant to be a writer.
I'm lazy.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Or maybe it's just that you're not working with your own schedule as well as you could. So that's the first step. Yeah.
So what's the next step then?
Then the next step is, I kind of alluded to it here before, but finding the time and saying, okay, now I know that I waste time here, or I'm using my time inefficiently here. So how can I take the things that are absolutely necessary? For example, if somebody has kids and they have to pick their kids up at this time, or they're homeschooling right now and they have to be at home a certain time, put the things on your schedule that you have no option on, right? Like, this is when I have to homeschool, and by the way, that this is a side note, not related to massage, but you can apply this to homeschooling your kids too, is when's their best time to study. Homeschool doesn't have to be when regular school used to be. It could be whatever time you want. So that's a side note. But taking the things that are that you can't change and putting them in the schedule first, and then looking for the windows where you can say, well, I have this option. I can do this. I can do this. There's also a lot more negotiation than people often think they have. Like, let's say you have a job somewhere that is 8 to 5. You work at a chiropractor and they want you to be there 8 to 5. But you really aren't hitting your stride till 9. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can just say, can I work 9 to 6? Sometimes that's not an option, but you could put that in there. Or you're the opposite way and you're better earlier. Hey, 7 to 4, or I'm making this up, but put that on your schedule, put what cannot be changed on your schedule, and then look for windows. And then in those windows, be like, this is the once a week that I'm going to do my bookkeeping. This is the once a week I'm going to do my marketing. This is the 4 or 5 times a week I'm going to be doing rejuvenating activities. And then plug things in a way that creates a schedule that doesn't feel onerous, that doesn't feel like you're trudging through mud, right? Pick it and be like, oh no, I would like to do that. And so that's the next step. And then after that, I would say, schedule it. And this is the place where most people have the most friction, where if you schedule a dentist appointment, you put it on your calendar and you just go, right? Yep. Schedule your bookkeeping that same way. Be like, if I picked that I'm going to be doing bookkeeping at 7 a.m. on Fridays, that's when I do my bookkeeping.
9 a.m. on Fridays. Yeah.
Then it goes on the schedule like any other appointment would go on the schedule, because I know that that's the best time for me to have the highest chance of success in getting that done. And I treat it as important as any other appointment I've made.
And mine can slide, but it never slides out of the morning.
Right.
It has to happen before lunch.
Yeah, it has to. Mine too. I have flexibility. We don't have to be rigid, but I don't let it, I put it actually on my calendar so that if somebody says to me, hey, can you meet Friday at 7? When I go to my calendar, I can say no, because it's booked, right? That's just psychologically, I think it works better for us to be booked. But anyway.
Now, when I first started practicing as a massage therapist, I tried like super maximizing my schedule. And, like half an hour here, half an hour. And I burned out so fast. Yeah. Because I didn't put any cushion in there. For transition from one thing to another, it was like all time must be used efficiently.
Yes.
And I'm presuming that for most people, that's not going to work.
For most people, it doesn't. This is a really simple thing, and it's exactly what you're talking about. But I'll say, write down the hours you want to work, right? So people will write down 10 to 3. And so then they say, from 3 to 4, I'll be at home. No, because you haven't cleaned up, driven home, gotten home. So you actually, now you're already behind, because you've said that the next activity is going to start at 3. And when you're doing a schedule, it kind of looks like that, right? You say, right. Oh, I'm going to massage 7 to 3. Well, does that mean that your last massage is going to start at 3 or end at 3? So if it's going to start at 3, you're actually working till 4, then you're cleaning up, then you're going home. So your next activity realistically is not going to start till 5:30 or 6.
Yeah.
Right. Depending on what you're doing. So putting cushions in and being realistic about how much time that things take. And then in addition to that, another point that you made that I think is really good is putting cushions in there to be like, I want to take a walk, and put the time in there instead of hoping you get time. And I talked about that a lot in my thing is we say these very passive things. We say, if I find time, if I have time, instead of saying, I'm going to make time.
Mhm.
You know, and we say these passive things as if we're just going to randomly stumble upon time and be like, well, look at that. There's a whole bucket of time.
And time. Oh.
I've just got time all over the place. So I talk about really actively putting on your schedule the things that you want to do. Like in the morning, I need an hour to do nothing. I need an hour with me and coffee, and that's it. And that's factored into my day. I don't hope that I get that hour. I just don't plan anything before that hour happens, for everybody's sake.
One of the things that came up, especially in the early days of COVID, was this whole, look at all the free time you now have, all those projects, all that self-improvement, all those things. And we found that all time isn't equal. That if there's a lot of stress, and for most of us in those first 6 months of COVID,
right,
even if we were sitting still, it was a ton of stress.
Right.
Kind of realistically evaluating sort of the energetic nature of your time. What can you realistically ask of yourself in a day?
Right.
Because I think that came as a shock to a lot of people. They're like, but wait, I have all this time. Why am I not doing this?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you're bringing in a big, stress has a massive impact, and that the COVID stress is one thing for sure, right? That's a whole different, but if we're stressed out all the time because we're always behind and we're doing that, and we're not doing these rejuvenating activities that I mentioned before, then when the time we do use is so much less efficient. And I think you've heard this, I think everybody's heard this, but the parable of the guy who cut down trees, where he would cut trees every day. So he'd take a saw, he'd go cut down trees, and
this might be a Pacific Northwest thing. I don't know.
Right, I know. And I'm not a good storyteller, just so we're clear. I've heard this told much more lovely way, but he's cutting down trees every day. And everybody wants his trees, right? They're like, I got it. So now he's got all these customers, and he's trying to keep up with demand, and his saw is getting more and more dull. He doesn't have time to sharpen it because there's so many demands. Well, now it takes him longer to cut trees. So now he's even more behind.
Yeah.
Well, if you just stopped to sharpen your saw, you could cut more trees, but you can't. You haven't even stopped long enough to sharpen your saw, and now your tool is dull, and now you're getting more and more behind. And that to me is really about self-care. Is you have to stop and sharpen yourself so you can get back to what you're doing. So if we're always behind and we're always stressed, then when we sit down to do our bookkeeping, or when we sit down to do our marketing, or whatever it is that we're doing, or even have dinner with the family, and we're not present because we're so stressed about what we need to do, you're not doing any project well, because all of the projects, you're all over the place. So picking your best times, your most efficient times to do different tasks, and then packing into your schedule rejuvenating times and cushions and space. I always say make space in your schedule. Then that when you sit down to that bookkeeping, it's going to go so much better.
Now, you had also talked in your presentation about things like color and space and sound, and how all of these things can contribute to how you feel and move through your time.
Right. You need to find what works for you to make your time the most efficient. So you mentioned this retreat, going away, getting out of your house, right? Mm-hmm. I would say I have met very, very, very few people that do their best at their own kitchen table when they're surrounded by the dishwasher that needs to be painted and the cat that needs to be bathed, which was another big influence in COVID, people working at home.
Yeah.
It's a hard place to work, right? But you need to pick something that works for you. So sometimes I'd say for a lot of people, it's a change of scenery. For a lot of people, it's having a soundtrack that triggers your brain to say, now it's time to do this. And almost always that soundtrack, it needs to not have music or lyrics, by the way. Like if you're trying to.
Although I'll say I have a playlist called Writing Music, and it has lyrics, but everything is kind of this. I've discovered there is a particular rhythm I like to hear.
Okay.
And that syncs up with my brain when it's in writing mode.
And that works for you. And you can, writing feels like a creative task to me. And so you can handle a little bit more lyrics in creative tasks, lyrics in analytical tasks.
Right. No. Yeah. Things like classical or something where even if they're saying something, I don't know what they're saying.
Right. Exactly.
Latin, or Russian.
And then your brain isn't listening to it and making sentences out of it or whatever. But change of scenery, maybe just surrounding yourself. Like I have students, when they do assignments, they must do in color. They can't do it in black and white because your brain works much better using different colors. So their notebooks and stuff that they have to turn into me have to be in color. And because you're more engaged. Yeah, picking up a pencil, like, oh, what color do I want to do this? And there's a thoughtfulness to saying, I'm going to color the veins blue and the arteries red. And so you have the sort of that thought process in it. People that can't change scenery, like they have to be at home for some reason, everything's shut down, right? Is setting up a space that maybe you put some headphones on and you change the space in front of you so it looks different. And basically, there's no real right or wrong to this. It's just saying, what have you done to tell your brain we're shifting into a different mode? Right? What have we done? What physical thing have we done to shift into the mode of getting this thing done? I don't think I talked about this in my presentation, but I am really a rewards-based person. So a lot of times when I have to do something big, I have a reward scheduled that I can't do if I don't finish the project. So
if you don't get that bookkeeping done,
then I can't do the thing, whatever the thing is. Maybe I'm going to go, have dinner with a friend, or maybe I'm going to go get a massage or something, and I can't do that thing because I haven't finished it. Rewards don't work for everybody, but or maybe the reward is just like, I'm going to have this piece of chocolate, right? But I'd probably eat the chocolate before the bookkeeping. So it depends.
You should be honest with yourself about your relationship to rewards.
I know what I need. So my point is you need to find something that works for you to say, okay, I'm going to put on that house cleaning music. I'm going to put on that bookkeeping music. And those are different soundtracks. I'm going to do whatever this is so that you can really get your brain wrapped around what you're spending your time doing,
Do you ever have students who they just can't do this? Like, I think of, I adore my sister, but she's an accountant in her soul. I mean, in her soul, she was born to be an accountant. I have a lot of friends in college like, I'm studying accounting to fall back on it. No, that's just where she needs to be. And her world is very linear and it's very black and white. That's what it takes to be a good accountant. And I think if I said to her, when you do that, do it in different colors, she'd go, well, what color should I use? Right. Well, what color feels right?
Black on white.
Black or red. I'm usually working with black or
red.
I may be shortchanging her, but I have learned over the years, her brain and mine are fundamentally different about these things.
Right. But if she's an accountant in her soul, she's not needing to find a tool to get that done. Right. So when you're doing what you love to be doing, there's no friction in it. Right. It's easy to do. So it's more of finding a way to do the things that might feel harder. I keep using bookkeeping, and you and I keep using bookkeeping, and I think it's because we both teach business and we know that that's a real uphill battle for most massage therapists, right? So marketing for sure. And most of them are
media for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, right. You use it all the time, but it's hard to switch over to using it to business or something. But so most of them are not accountants in their soul. And so making accounting a little bit more fun or, or different, it works for that. So but that's, your sister's a great example. It's working with what works for you. I love paperwork. I don't mind sitting down and doing paperwork. And, I know I call it paperwork, a lot of it's online and stuff like that, but you know what I mean? But I like to do that. So that doesn't feel like an uphill battle to me, but marketing really does. So I'd have to have, where someone else might like the marketing more and might not like the paperwork as much. Mm-hmm. So I think it really just depends on what goal you're trying to achieve. For students that I work with studying, even though they want to study because they want to know the stuff, they don't necessarily know the best way to study. And that's when we get back to, you need to find out the best time of day for you to study. And then don't try to study once a week for 6 hours. Try to study 6 times a week for 25 minutes and then take a break. And I talked about taking a break, like Pomodoro technique.
Yeah.
I talked about that. So that's another tool that anybody can Google that.
You work for a defined period of time to accomplish a specific something. Then you take a defined break and you do it again and take a defined break. Yeah.
And your break needs to be a very different activity than you're doing. So if you're using your brain on a computer, you don't want your break to be on a computer. You want to stand up and have a dance party.
Yeah. It's not time to check the email now.
No, that's not switching. That's not a break for your brain.
Take the dishwasher, whatever works for you.
Except wash the cat. That's not a 5-minute break task. But yeah. So it's mainly just, I've talked about a lot of stuff here, but what I'm getting at is stop reading what other people tell you should do. Mm-hmm. And go, what feeds my soul? What do I have to get done to pay my bills? How do I get those two to work together in a way that works for my schedule? And that's the answer, right? So, feed your soul so that you can feed yourself and set your day up in a way that looks delicious rather than like a big task.
And I'm assuming that sometimes there's going to be some trial and error.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to go, I bet Sunday night would be great for. And then you try it a couple of weeks and go, nope, Sunday night sucks for that.
Yeah. And then switch. Who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody is paying attention.
You didn't publish this, in the New York Times.
You didn't publish it. Yeah. And but we're making a joke, but there's something about that. A lot of times people will put stuff up like, I'm going to exercise every morning from now on. And they put it on social media and you're setting yourself up for the failure of an external metric that doesn't matter. So just don't put that up there. Do your own thing. You're testing stuff out. You're like, I'm going to try to get up every other day this week and study early in the morning. And if it doesn't work at the end of a couple of weeks, scrap it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
What your brain wants to do at that time.
Yeah.
And see if you can't slide that in and slide the studying in somewhere else. To me, I was thinking about it as I was swimming laps today, because that's what swimming laps for me is the time when my brain gets to float. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Super relaxing. Some people might approach it as this is exercise. I'm like, look at how pretty the water is.
That's rejuvenating. There's your rejuvenating activity.
Very much so. But I was thinking about this conversation and I was thinking it's sort of like how people approach dieting. It's like, I will follow this other person's plan. Right. Oh, I've read about this one. Let me follow that person's plan. And the percentage of failure for that, short-term or long-term, is very, very high.
Yeah.
Because you're, like you said, working with an external metric.
Right. Somebody
else's idea of how to manage this thing called your body.
Right. And it has a lot of rigidity into it too, right? Yeah. Like you, if you're on a diet and then you eat something off the diet, you're like, well, I failed. And that's not true. That's not accurate. And it's not true with this either. When you're trying to figure out a schedule that feels like it flows for you and you hit a day that doesn't work or you hit a time that doesn't work, it's not a failure. It's just you've learned something in that moment and then you can adjust your schedule accordingly. And I want to say something else that you said something that reminded me of this, kind of related, but the time frame matters too. Just because when I'm saying morning or afternoon, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do analytical tasks all morning. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For a lot of people, analytical tasks need to be quite a short window. And then creative tasks can take up more amount of time, but
Mhm.
you might be somebody that's really efficient for about 30 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day, rather than somebody that's efficient for 2 hours once a day. And that's fine too. It doesn't, none of this matters. None of it matters. What matters is you reaching what you want to reach. And this goes back to a conversation we had before we started recording. You have to know where you're going, right?
Mm.
So why are you scheduling yourself? Where are you going? What are the goals you're trying to achieve? What's the point of doing all this?
What are you going to get out of this that makes it all worth it to you?
Right, that's it. Because if you don't have a why, then when you do something is irrelevant. So why are you doing your bookkeeping every Friday at 9? You know?
And I hear people use the dreaded word should.
All the time.
Should is a very dangerous word.
Let's not should on each other.
That there's a split going on between what you want and what you think you should want.
Right. And yet that's like almost a whole different conversation that we can talk about, is picking what you want separate from what everyone else decides you should want. I always say, don't shit on me.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a really important thing. You have to know why you're doing it. And bookkeeping, we keep using this example, so I'll use it again. You can also just hire a bookkeeper. Maybe you're like, I don't know why I'm doing my own bookkeeping. I have no idea why. There's no why. I don't ever want to do this. I don't want to learn it. I don't care about it. Guess what? Then you know what you need to schedule is time to find a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
That's what you need to schedule, right? Because there might not be a good why for doing that, or schedule a marketer, you know, or whatever.
It's why I joke that we hired an accountant because it's cheaper than marriage counseling when it comes time to do our taxes.
Yeah.
For my husband, but when it comes to taxes, our brains we just can't.
We just can't. Yeah. Well, you know Michael Reynolds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his recommendations, he's like, no, don't do it. Like, hire people.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this yourself? And I used to be that way. I used to do all my own bookkeeping because I was a bookkeeper before I was, and now one day literally one day why am I doing this? And so and it could be anything. It could be, maybe you don't like cooking, so you start ordering those meal plans, or you get somebody to clean your house. It doesn't matter.
Laundry's a classic.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with laundry. Pay somebody else to do your laundry.
Right. And if you can't have a good why for why you're doing something, then find someone else to do it, because then you're more efficient, and you can generally make more money when you're more efficient to pay for those things. It's very easy. I think bookkeeping is a low-hanging fruit in that way. Like, it's usually doesn't cost enough to justify spending that time and angst where you could be doing something else that would make you more money. So anyway, it doesn't matter. And oh my gosh, I know we're all over the place. The point is if you want to have a good schedule and you want to have a good routine and you want time working for you, you have to start with learning yourself and learning how you're the most efficient and where you're the most efficient, and then go from there. Close the books, watch this, because we got good stuff here, right? But
because we're telling you to go figure yourself out.
Go figure yourself out. And there are activities
of your schedule.
Yeah, there are activities where you can really I do think that recording of what I did for the conference is available. I think you can get it from them.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, there's activities like just tracking what you do for a week and seeing, where can I make time in this, or where can I rearrange things that feel better to me? It's that simple.
Non-judgmental. You can't, because it's sort of like starting a food log. All of a sudden you're trying to eat better because you're writing it down. Look, I didn't watch Netflix at all this week, and it's killing me.
Exactly. And if you sit down to do something and then you realize that your brain's not just in it, make a note of that. Be like, it's not my time. It's not my time for that. So, so this would be that's kind of a quick summary, but that's what I would say to start with.
Okay, and like I said, we said 20 to 30 minutes. we're massage therapists. We could easily talk for 45 to an hour because that's what massage therapists do when they finally get together and start talking to each other.
For sure. Yes, that's true.
I'll do it. But thank you. So half an hour, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. The takeaways are figure out, take a look at how you're spending your time versus how you want to spend your time.
Yep.
Figure yourself out. Be honest about who you are and what works for you.
Yep.
When possible, create a space for the tasks that need your concentration.
Yep.
And build in buffer and get creative. Use color, use whatever makes it fun for you.
That's it.
Yeah, those are the big takeaways. And then you can start making time fit you and your time being, in a much nicer partnership than always kind of at odds with each other.
Yeah, make your time work for you instead of waiting to stumble across time. Make it work for you.
Yeah, those are Legos on the floor. Those are not time. Yeah, if you step on it and it hurts, it wasn't extra time. It was a Lego. So, thanks, Annie. It was
Thank
delightful
you.
to talk to you one-on-one.
Yes.
I appreciate what you're offering. I hope everybody sees this. I'll be posting this widely.
Awesome.
And
Love
you have a fabulous day.
it. You too. I'll talk to you soon.
Stop recording.